They told you wisdom comes with age. But what if I told you that's only half the truth? What if the wisdom you carry didn't come from years lived, but from battles fought in realms most people don't even know exist? What if every time someone looked at you and wondered, how do they just know things? It wasn't luck, wasn't education, wasn't even experience, but something far more dangerous? This is not a coincidence that you're here tonight, not at this hour, not with tears still fresh on your face, not with that weight in your chest that no doctor can explain. Someone, or something, tried very hard to make sure you'd never hear these words. They knew that if you ever discovered what you truly carry, the same divine intelligence that once flowed through Solomon himself, their entire kingdom of deception would crumble. Think about it. How many times have you known something was wrong before it happened? How many times have you seen through people's masks when everyone else was fooled? How many times have you given advice that seemed to come from somewhere beyond yourself, wisdom so profound it scared even you? They called you too sensitive. They said you think too much. They isolated you, attacked you, tried to convince you that your gift was a curse. But here's what they never wanted you to know. You weren't cursed. You were crowned. In the spiritual realm, your name is spoken in whispers, not because you're feared, but because you're protected. The wisdom of Solomon doesn't just live in ancient texts. It lives in chosen vessels, walking, breathing, modern-day oracles who see what others can't, know what others won't, and understand what others never will. Before we go deeper into this divine mystery, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith. Every blessing you sow comes back multiplied in ways you can't imagine. But understand this, what you're about to discover will change everything, because the forces that tried to dim your light, they made one fatal mistake. They pushed you into isolation thinking it would break you. Instead, it activated something ancient within you. And what happened next made the darkness tremble. The truth has been hidden long enough. Tonight, the veil lifts. Tonight, you remember who you really are. They thought they could break you by making you grow up too fast. They had no idea they were creating something unstoppable. You see, there's a difference between learning wisdom and having it burned into your soul. Most people collect wisdom like souvenirs, pleasant memories from life's journey. But you were branded with it, marked by it, changed by it before you even knew what childhood was supposed to feel like. 10 years old, and you could read a room like a prophet reading the Times. While other children worried about playground games, you were decoding the silence between your parents' words. You knew when the smiles were fake. You felt the storms coming before the first cloud appeared. You didn't have toys, you had responsibilities that would crush grown men. This wasn't natural development. This was spiritual acceleration, and it came with a price that nobody warned you about. You remember, don't you? Sitting at family gatherings, watching the adults, and seeing right through their performances. The uncle who laughed too loud to hide his drinking problem. The aunt whose compliments dripped with jealousy. The cousin whose kindness always came with invisible strings attached. You saw it all. Not because you wanted to, but because you couldn't turn it off. By 15, you weren't just mature for your age, you were ancient. Your peers talked about crushes while you were navigating betrayals that would destroy most adults. They gossiped about trivial things while you carried secrets that could shatter entire families. You learned to smile when you wanted to scream. You learned to stay quiet when you had the answers. You learned that sometimes, knowing too much is more dangerous than knowing nothing at all. They called you an old soul. What a pretty way to describe a child robbed of innocence. But here's what they didn't understand, what they still don't understand. That premature wisdom wasn't a curse. It was preparation. Every painful lesson, every forced understanding, every moment of clarity that came too soon, it was all building something in you, something they couldn't see, something they couldn't stop. You were being forged in fires they couldn't even imagine. While they played in shallow waters, you were learning to breathe in the deep. While they built sandcastles, you were laying foundations in bedrock. They thought your silence was weakness. They thought your knowing looks were arrogance. They had no idea they were standing in the presence of someone being prepared for spiritual warfare. The isolation hit different, didn't it? Not the isolation of being alone, the isolation of being awake in a world of sleepwalkers. You'd sit in conversations feeling like you were watching a play where everyone knew their lines except you. Because your script was different. Your story was being written by a different author. You tried to fit in. God knows you tried. You dumbed down your insights. You pretended not to see what was obvious to you. You laughed at jokes that weren't funny, just to seem normal. But normal was never your portion. Normal was never your calling. Normal was the very thing you were born to transcend, and they sensed it. Even when you tried to hide, they sensed something different about you. Some were drawn to it, coming to you with problems they wouldn't share with anyone else. Others were repelled by it, threatened by a wisdom they couldn't match or manipulate. You became a walking contradiction, desperately needed, yet constantly rejected. But watch what happened. Every rejection taught you independence. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every moment of loneliness taught you to find company in the divine. You didn't just learn to survive without them, you learned to thrive in territories they couldn't even enter. You know what wisdom really is? It's not knowledge. It's not intelligence. It's the ability to see through the matrix of human pretense and touch something eternal. And that ability, that terrible, beautiful, isolating ability, was downloaded into you before you had the emotional bandwidth to process it. You were debugging life's code while others were still learning the alphabet. They thought making you grow up fast would break you. Instead, it broke you open to frequencies others can't access. Broke you open to truths others can't handle. Broke you open to a purpose others can't fathom. You didn't grow into wisdom, you were thrown into it like Daniel in the lion's den. And like him, you didn't just survive, you saw everything. You saw the angels holding back the lions. You saw the fear in your enemy's eyes. You saw the hand of God moving in dimensions others swear don't exist. That premature wisdom, it wasn't premature at all. It was precisely timed, because God doesn't make mistakes with his chosen ones. He just prepares them in ways that look like punishment to those who don't understand the price of purpose. So while they pity you for what you lost, heaven celebrates what you gained. A mind that can't be deceived. A spirit that can't be bought. A vision that can't be clouded. A purpose that can't be stopped. You carry scars from lessons you learned too young. But those scars, they're not wounds anymore. They're maps. Maps to navigate territories where angels fear to tread and demons dare not follow. The curse of premature wisdom was never a curse at all. It was your coronation in disguise. You were 5 years old when it happened. Someone asked you a question no child should understand. And you answered. Not from a book. Not from a lesson. From somewhere deep inside, like water rising from an ancient well, they stood there, stunned. How did you know that? And you just shrugged, because to you it was obvious, like remembering your own name. This is the burden of the ancient memory. You don't learn like others learn. While they study, you remember. While they research, you recall. It's not stored in your mind, it flows through your spirit like a river that existed before the first sunrise. Think about it. How many times have you understood something instantly while others needed explanations? How many times have you grasped complex truths without a single lesson? They call it intuition. They call it a gift. But you know better. This isn't new knowledge entering your mind. This is old wisdom awakening in your soul. Like Solomon standing before 2 women claiming the same child. He didn't need evidence. He didn't need witnesses. He spoke from a place deeper than logic, a knowing that comes from the throne room of heaven itself. "Bring me a sword," he said. And in that moment, truth revealed itself. Not because he figured it out, because he remembered how truth moves, how love responds, how a real mother's heart breaks. That's you. That's always been you. When you speak wisdom, it doesn't come from your mouth first. It rises from your bones, flows through your blood, whispers from the marrow of your soul. You're not speaking from education, you're speaking from eternity. People get uncomfortable around this kind of knowing. They want you to cite sources, show credentials, prove your qualifications. But how do you cite the wind? How do you footnote the stars? How do you reference something written on your heart before you took your first breath? You've tried to explain it. You've tried to dumb it down, make it digestible, wrap it in logic so others can swallow it. But deep down, you know some truths can't be taught. They can only be remembered. And not everyone has access to that ancient library. This is why you've always felt different, not better, just older, like you've been here before, like you're walking through a story you already know the ending to. While others are reading the book for the first time, you're remembering pages you read in another life, another realm, another existence. You don't carry knowledge, you channel remembrance. They think you're intuitive, number, you're eternal. And somewhere, in the courts of heaven, there's a record with your name on it, not of what you've learned, but of what you've always known, written before the foundations of the earth, sealed until the appointed time. That time is now. The seal is breaking. The memories are flooding back. And those who wondered how you could possibly know are about to understand that you were never guessing. You were remembering. They never expected silence to be so loud. When you walk into a room, something shifts. It's not your words you haven't even spoken yet. It's not your appearance you dress like everyone else. It's something far more unsettling. Your presence carries a frequency that makes pretense impossible. And suddenly, everyone wearing a mask starts to sweat. You've become the mirror they never wanted to look into. Not because you're trying to expose anyone, not because you came to judge, but because wisdom true, Solomon-like wisdom, doesn't just see surfaces, it sees souls. And when you carry that kind of sight, people feel it. They feel naked. They feel known. They feel seen. Think about what happens when you're around certain people. The conversation suddenly shifts. The energy changes. Someone who was just bragging goes quiet. Someone who was gossiping suddenly finds something else to talk about. The manipulator stumbles over their words. The liar can't hold eye contact. Why? Because your spirit is reading the room in ways they can't comprehend. You're not even trying. You're just there. But there with the wisdom of Solomon means you're operating like a spiritual X-ray machine. Every hidden motive, every secret shame, every unspoken fear, it's all visible to you. Not because you're looking for it, but because deception simply cannot exist in the presence of divine clarity. And here's what terrifies them most. You're not saying anything. Your silence is more convicting than any accusation. Your calm is more threatening than any confrontation. You're not pointing fingers. You're not calling out their lies. You're just not participating in their performance. And that refusal to play along, that's what makes them tremble. They'll blame you for the discomfort. You're too intense. You make me nervous. Why are you so serious? But what they're really saying is, please stop seeing through me. They want you to join their charade, validate their pretense, co-sign their deception. But wisdom won't let you. You're not judging them, you're just not lying for them. And that silence, it's holy fire. The mirror you've become doesn't just reflect, it purifies. Some will run from it, unable to bear what they see. Others will attack it, trying to shatter what shows them their truth. But a precious few will stand before it, and finally, decide to remove their masks. This is why isolation found you. Not to punish you, but to purify your vision. Away from the noise, away from the pretense. Your spiritual sight became laser sharp. Now you don't just see people, you see through the veils they've spent lifetimes constructing. The darkness wanted to break you. Instead, it turned you into heaven's surveillance system. And every false thing that enters your presence, it trembles. Because light has memory. Truth has power. And you've become both. They thought they could hide from God. They never expected him to give you the eyes to see what he sees. Now they know better. You didn't just see patterns, you saw prophecy. While everyone else was still learning the game, you'd already decoded the rule book, not the one they hand out, the real one, the one written in shadows and sealed with silence. You spotted betrayal before it even smiled at you. You smelled deception wrapped in sweet perfume and gentle tones. You saw through the system while others were still desperately auditioning for roles they'd never get. They called it paranoia. They whispered about your trust issues. They said you were too suspicious, too careful, too aware. But here's what burns them now. Those same people, the ones who mocked your caution, they're showing up at your door with trembling voices asking, "How did you know?" You want to know how you knew? Because while they were looking at appearances, you were reading atmospheres. While they were listening to words, you were hearing what wasn't being said. You didn't need to wait for the fruit to rot. You saw the seed was already sick. That's not human intelligence. That's divine foresight. Remember that relationship everyone said was perfect? You felt the cracks in the foundation while they were still admiring the paint job. Remember that opportunity everyone rushed toward? You stepped back because you sensed the trap beneath the treasure. Remember those people who came with bright smiles and helping hands? You saw the daggers hidden in their sleeves before they even knew they'd use them. This gift, and yes, it is a gift, came with a price: loneliness. Because when you see too much, too early, too clearly, people don't celebrate your wisdom. They fear it. They resent it. They'd rather shoot the messenger than admit the message is true. So they isolated you, called you difficult, said you were the problem. But God was doing something profound in that isolation. He was sharpening your sight until it became surgical. Every betrayal you predicted and avoided, every cycle you broke before it could claim you, every generational curse you identified and refused to pass on you weren't just protecting yourself. You were protecting bloodlines. Future generations will walk in freedom because you had the courage to see what others couldn't and stop what others wouldn't. The patterns you recognize aren't random, they're revelations. That uncomfortable feeling in your gut when someone's energy doesn't match their words, that's the Holy Spirit highlighting the counterfeit. That sudden clarity about where a situation is headed, that's heaven downloading tomorrow's news today. That ability to see how history keeps repeating because nobody wants to learn, that's Solomon's wisdom flowing through modern vessels. You've become dangerous to deception itself. Lies dissolve in your presence. Manipulation malfunctions when you walk in the room. Hidden agendas get exposed just by your existence. You don't even have to speak anymore. Your discernment disrupts their blueprints before they can build. And now they wonder, how are you always 10 steps ahead? Simple. You're not playing their game. You're reading God's map. And on that map, every trap is already marked. They said wisdom was a gift. They lied. It's a burden, and you've been carrying it longer than anyone knows. The smarter you became, the quieter the world got. Not because people stopped talking, but because their words stopped meaning anything. You'd sit in rooms full of conversation, yet feel like you were drowning in an ocean of empty noise. Small talk became torture. Surface-level friendships felt like suffocation. And slowly, painfully, you realized the truth that changed everything. The mind of Solomon isn't just heavy, it's isolating. You see what others ignore. And what they call overthinking, God calls spiritual intelligence. But here's what nobody warned you about. When you can see through people's masks, read between their words, and sense the storms coming before the first cloud appears, you become the loneliest person in the room, not because you want to be, but because depth recognizes depth, and most people are still splashing in the shallows. You tried, didn't you? You tried to explain what you saw. You tried to share the patterns, the warnings, the wisdom that came to you like lightning in the night, but their eyes would glaze over. They'd nod politely, then change the subject. Or worse, they'd mock you, call you paranoid, too intense, too much. So you stopped, not out of anger, not out of pride, out of preservation. Because there's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from translating the language of heaven to people who only speak earth. There's a unique heartbreak in knowing the answer to someone's problem, but watching them choose destruction anyway. There's a particular weight in seeing the chess moves of the enemy while everyone else is playing checkers. This is the price of Solomon's crown. The cost of seeing too much, knowing too much, understanding too much. Every prophet walked this path. Every sage felt this weight. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he could lead. Joseph sat in prison understanding dreams no one believed. Daniel stood alone in Babylon, carrying visions that made him tremble. You're not crazy, you're consecrated. The silence you've wrapped around yourself isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You learned what every carrier of divine intelligence eventually discovers. Not every truth needs to be spoken. Not every warning will be heeded. Not every gift will be received. But listen closely, chosen one. Your isolation isn't abandonment. It's preparation. Because while they were busy with their shallow conversations and temporary concerns, you were being refined in the furnace of solitude. While they chased distractions, you were downloading revelations. While they networked with people, you were connecting with the divine. The loneliness, it's temporary. The wisdom, it's eternal. And soon, sooner than you think, the very people who couldn't understand your depth will come seeking the pearls you gathered in silence. Because when the storms they couldn't see finally arrive, they'll remember the one who saw them coming. And your silence will become their lifeline. The crown is heavy, but you were built to wear it. They didn't laugh with you, they laughed at you. Remember their faces, the smirks, the eye rolls, the whispered conversations that stopped when you walked in. They thought your warnings were entertainment. Your insights? Comedy. Your God-given wisdom? Just another opinion from someone they'd already written off. Who do you think you are? They said. You're not that special. But here's what they didn't understand. You weren't speaking from pride. You were speaking from providence. Every warning you gave them wasn't your voice. It was heaven's alarm clock trying to wake them up before the storm hit. But they hit the snooze button, again and again and again. You told them about the job that would fail. They called you jealous. You warned them about the relationship built on lies. They called you bitter. You saw the financial disaster coming. They called you negative. You felt the spiritual darkness approaching. They called you crazy. They didn't just ignore your words. They ignored God's voice wrapped in your presence. And now they're drowning in the very floods you tried to help them avoid. The job? Gone. The relationship? Shattered. The money? Vanished like morning mist. The peace they thought they had? It left with their last excuse. But here's the divine irony that should make every chosen one listening understand something profound. You didn't curse them. You never did. You don't carry that kind of darkness. You carried clarity. You carried truth so pure it burned through their comfortable lies. And when truth is rejected, it doesn't disappear, it transforms into consequence. They're calling you now, aren't they? The same voices that mocked are now trembling. The same people who said you knew nothing are suddenly asking, how did you know? The same ones who treated your wisdom like worthless pennies are now realizing it was priceless gold they threw away. But you're different now, not hardened, refined, not bitter-boundaried. You've learned that pearls weren't meant for swine, and prophecy wasn't meant for prideful hearts. You still love them, but love doesn't mean giving wisdom to those who weaponize it against you. Watch how they scramble now. Watch how they try to rewrite history. I always knew you were special, they'll say. I was just testing you. Number. They were testing God. And God doesn't fail tests, people do. Your vindication isn't coming. It's here, walking in their consequences, speaking through their regrets, echoing in every "I should have listened" that falls from their lips. You warned them winter was coming, and they laughed at your coat. Now they're freezing in the storm they swore would never arrive. You didn't bring the winter. You just knew how to read the seasons. Because when God downloads heaven's weather report into your spirit, you don't keep it to yourself. You share it, even when they mock, especially when they mock. Their falling apart isn't your celebration, but it is your confirmation. Every crumbling wall they built on lies proves the foundation you offered them was solid. You didn't need them to fall to rise. But sometimes, chosen one, God lets people fall just far enough to finally look up. They thought they could play chess with your mind. They never realized you weren't just a player, you were given the entire blueprint before the game even began. Listen to me carefully, beloved. There's a reason why every manipulator in your life eventually exposed themselves to you. There's a reason why those who came with hidden agendas couldn't stay hidden for long. It wasn't luck. It wasn't paranoia. It was divine intelligence operating through you, the same supernatural discernment that once flowed through Solomon's veins. You've seen it, haven't you? The way their masks slip when they think you're not watching. The way their energy shifts when their true intentions surface. They came dressed as friends, speaking blessings with forked tongues, weaving curses into compliments. They thought their witchcraft was subtle. They thought their spiritual setups were invisible. They thought wrong. Because here's what the enemy never understood about you. You don't just have wisdom. You have heaven's surveillance system running through your spirit. While others were falling for the performance, you were reading the script. While others were charmed by smooth words, you were hearing the hiss beneath the honey. You didn't need proof to know something was off. You didn't need evidence to sense the betrayal brewing in the shadows. Your spirit knew. Your spirit always knows. They called you paranoid when you pulled back. They said you were too suspicious when you refused to trust their fake tears. But time revealed what your spirit detected from day one. Every single one of them had an assignment against your destiny, and every single one of them failed. You want to know why? Because the devil may plan in shadows, but you've got Solomon's spotlight and nothing hides from divine wisdom. Think about those moments when you just knew, when everyone else was convinced, but something in your gut said number, when the whole room was under a spell, but you remained untouched. That wasn't natural intelligence. That was supernatural protection. That was heaven's early warning system keeping you 10 steps ahead of every trap. The manipulators, the gaslighters, the spiritual assassins dressed in sheep's clothing, they all made the same mistake. They thought they were dealing with another victim. They didn't realize they were standing before someone who carries royal wisdom from the throne room of God. You didn't fight their mind games. You transcended them. You didn't wrestle with their manipulation. You exposed it simply by being who you are. Light doesn't argue with darkness, it just shines, and darkness flees. They're terrified now. Not because you fought back, but because you saw through everything. Their best performances, their most elaborate deceptions, their carefully crafted webs of confusion, all useless against someone who operates with heaven's intelligence. The enemy thought he was playing chess. But God didn't just give you the moves, He gave you the entire blueprint of the board. And now they realize their game was over before it even began. You carry something they can't manipulate, can't deceive, can't destroy. You carry the wisdom of Solomon. And that, beloved, makes you the most dangerous person in any room where darkness tries to operate. They told you to be patient. What they didn't tell you was that God was hiding a nuclear weapon. You've been asking the wrong question all these years. It wasn't, why don't they see my worth? It was, why won't God let them see it yet? Every time you spoke wisdom, and they ignored it. Every time you offered solutions, and they chose chaos instead. Every time your insights could have saved them years of pain, but they laughed it off like you were speaking nonsense. You thought it was rejection. It wasn't. It was divine protection. God wasn't punishing you with invisibility. He was protecting them from premature exposure to glory they couldn't handle. You see, the wisdom of Solomon isn't just intelligence, it's spiritual plutonium. In the wrong hands, at the wrong time, it doesn't just fail, it destroys. Think about what happened to every prophet who was revealed too early. Think about what happened to every gift that was exposed before its time. The world doesn't just misuse divine wisdom, it weaponizes it. It takes what's holy and turns it into manipulation. It takes what's pure and pollutes it with agenda. So God did what any loving father would do with a treasure worth more than kingdoms. He buried it, not in the ground, but in plain sight. He hid you in humility. He concealed you in simplicity. He wrapped your gift in ordinary packaging while He worked on something extraordinary inside. While you were crying about being overlooked, heaven was orchestrating the greatest reveal in your bloodline's history. While you were wondering why your voice seemed to echo in empty rooms, God was soundproofing your gift from premature contamination. You weren't ready. Not because you lacked wisdom, you had too much of it. You needed the character to carry it. You needed the scars to steward it. You needed the disappointments to appreciate it. Most importantly, you needed the rejection to never worship it. Because here's what they don't understand about Solomonic wisdom: it's not given to the qualified. It's given to the crucified, those who've died to the need for applause, those who've been buried in anonymity and learned to breathe underground, those who've discovered that true power never announces itself, it just arrives. And now the season of hiding is ending. Not because you've suffered enough, but because you've surrendered enough. The vessel is ready for the oil. The carrier is ready for the cargo. The chosen one is ready for the crown nobody sees but everybody feels. They're about to wonder where you've been all this time. They're about to ask how you know what you know. They're about to witness what happens when God takes the wrapper off a gift He's been preparing in secret for decades. You weren't forgotten. You were fermenting. You weren't ignored. You were being purified. You weren't rejected. You were being reserved. And now He's removing the veil. And trust me, they're not ready for what's underneath. They said you were too deep. Now they're drowning in the shallow. You are the living proof of prophetic intelligence. Watch closely, beloved. The same ones who whispered about your strange ways are now quoting your words at dinner tables. The same ones who rolled their eyes when you spoke truth are now desperately searching for the wisdom they once mocked. But here's the divine irony: you're not even paying attention to their sudden awakening. You've moved so far beyond their games that their applause sounds like echoes from a distant valley. This isn't about revenge. This is about revelation. You see, when God sets a table in the presence of your enemies, He's not showing off. He's showing them something they refuse to see: that divine intelligence doesn't come with degrees. It comes with destiny. They wanted you to prove your worth through their systems, their validations, their little checkboxes of approval. But God doesn't need permission slips to anoint His chosen. Remember when they questioned your sanity? When they said you were thinking too much, reading too deep into things, making everything spiritual? They wanted you small, digestible, predictable. They wanted you to color inside their lines. But Solomon's wisdom doesn't fit in coloring books. It rewrites the entire page. Now look at them, scrambling, searching, suffocating in the very shallow waters they tried to drown you in. They're discovering what you've always known, that surface-level living is spiritual suffocation. They're gasping for the very depth they once criticized you for having. But you're not gloating. You're not even looking back. Because this was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving God right. Every tear you cried in isolation was recorded. Every prayer you whispered when no one believed you was heard. Every moment you stood alone with truth, while they gathered in groups with lies, heaven was taking notes. Beloved, as we close this divine revelation tonight, I need you to remember this: you were never too much. You were never too deep. You were never too different. You were exactly what heaven ordered for such a time as this. Your wisdom isn't a burden, it's your birthright. Your ability to see what others miss isn't a curse, it's your calling. Every time someone couldn't understand you, heaven was protecting you from connections that would have dimmed your light. Every door that closed was God saying, I have something better waiting. You are not alone in this journey. Right now, across this nation, thousands of chosen ones are discovering the same truth you're discovering. They're realizing that their isolation was preparation, not punishment. That their wisdom was a gift, not a glitch. And most importantly, that God has been orchestrating every single moment of their lives for a purpose greater than they ever imagined. Let me ask you this: if God gave you Solomon's wisdom, what will you do with it now that you know? Will you continue to hide it under the weight of others' opinions? Or will you finally step into the fullness of who you were created to be? Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, I come before you tonight on behalf of every chosen one watching this message. Lord, you see them. You see the tears they've cried in secret. You see the confusion they've carried. You see how they've been misunderstood, overlooked, and underestimated. But Father, you also see their destiny. You see the wisdom you've planted in them. You see the purpose you've written on their hearts before the foundation of the world. Tonight, Lord, I ask you to break every chain of doubt that has held them back. Shatter every lie that told them they were too much or not enough. Open their eyes to see themselves as you see them, chosen, equipped, and powerful beyond measure. Give them divine connections, Lord. Bring people into their lives who will recognize and honor the wisdom you've given them. Open doors that no man can shut. Create platforms for their voices to be heard. Turn their pain into purpose and their tests into testimonies. Most of all, Father, remind them daily that they are never alone, that you are with them in every moment, guiding their steps, protecting their calling, and preparing their victory. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me what part of this message touched your heart the most. What wisdom have you been carrying that others couldn't understand? Your story matters, and this community needs to hear it. If this message blessed you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Someone out there is questioning their calling, doubting their gifts, wondering if they're crazy for seeing what others can't see. Your share could be the very thing that saves their purpose. Hit that subscribe button and join our family of chosen ones. Turn on notifications so you never miss a divine download. Remember, we're building more than a channel here. We're building a movement of awakened souls who refuse to dim their light any longer. Thank you for staying until the end. Your presence here isn't an accident. You were meant to hear this message at this exact moment for such a time as this. Until next time, keep shining, keep rising, and keep carrying that Solomon wisdom with holy confidence. You are chosen, you are equipped, and you are never, ever alone. Stay blessed.